Christine Jacobs, and I'm the executive director. Represent PA has been in existence since the 2014 election. And in 2018, we invested $200,000 in women running for the state legislature. Up until 2018, Pennsylvania ranked 49th in the United States in terms of share of women in elected office. We're now at roughly 42. We went from having 18% women in our legislature to 26%. And we like to say that that's because of our actions, but we were part of a group of organizations that are all trying to turn PA blue. And our piece of it is we want to turn PA blue with strong progressive women who are ready to make a change for all of us in Harrisburg. And that's what we're going to talk about today. You know, you'll hear a little bit from Jamie about the work that Turn PA Blue is doing. Then we'll talk about why we take a statewide look at things, why we don't just tell everybody to go out and make sure they vote for their local legislator. And we'll look at the net, you know, what's going on in Pennsylvania and what are the key issues and how you can all have an effect. And of course, if I haven't mentioned it yet, fundraising is our key. We are raising good money. We're having an influence. We're about to write some significant checks to candidates for our spring investments, but we could use more money. So don't forget, that is our goal as an organization. Jamie Perrapato, welcome to the call today. And why don't we turn it over to you to talk for a few minutes. And Jamie will present, I'll present, and then we're going to have a lot of dialogue between the two of us. We're going to pretend this is a live breakfast briefing.
My name's Jamie Perrapato. I'm the executive director of Turn PA Blue. We started after the 2017 election. All these people woke up and were upset about Trump being elected and wanted to do something. So we decided to try to help people find an accessible way to volunteer. And one of the most effective ways to volunteer is for state legislative candidates. The campaigns are small. You can see the difference that you make when you're working for these campaigns who have so many less resources. And that's why groups like Represent are invaluable for these candidates, particularly women candidates, because the money is just not there on the state legislature. And what do we do is pretty much whatever the candidates need. Our big thing was canvassers. I do think we're going to get back to that, and we have modified it in a way that fits, you know, the times we live in. So I think by the time summer rolls around, we can get out there. But in the meanwhile, we're doing a lot of phone banking, texting. We do postcards. We are starting a postcard store to help get postcards to people for candidates. We're doing a lot around vote by mail. And we do a lot of candidate support and trainings for volunteers. So pretty much whatever the campaign needs, we have volunteers that could do that. You know, we have people who are graphic designers and some people who are, you know, good at social media, writing, things like that. And our big focus right now is on mail-in ballots, since we just have that in Pennsylvania. So when we started, and I don't know if anybody knows how dire the Pennsylvania legislature was, before the midterms, we were down 10 seats in the House, 10 seats in the Senate and 20 in the House. We were on the wrong side of the supermajority in the Senate, which means we could not protect the governor's veto, which, as you see, he uses very often and needs to use very often. So, you know, Governor Wolf is really all that stands between us and these horrible policies that the state legislature has been trying to enact. But after the 2018 election, with a few special elections thrown in there, we managed to cut the margins down. And now we are, you can see the difference in the slide. We are down 9 in the House and 4 in the Senate. So we are right up on it. So this cycle, in addition to get rid of this abysmal president, this morally bankrupt president, we are going to get rid of this really oppressive, regressive majority in Harrisburg. So that's what our focus is. So these are our, I know it's very hard to look at, but this is the map of where our targets are. You know, these are not top secret targets. Everybody knows, you know, where we're playing, but I think this slide's important to just show you, you know, the map of Pennsylvania looks a lot like the map of our country. You know, you have blue on the borders, and then in the middle, it's all a big red mess, and there's a couple blue spots here and there. And this is what Pennsylvania looks like. So it's very similar to our national map. If you see the districts outlined in black, those are the target Senate districts. And pretty much the target House districts are anywhere that are red. So you can see that, we're slowly moving out into other districts, and we're moving, the next step is Bucks County and up into NEPA. And this big one red here, the 76, is Stephanie Borowitz. Do you guys know who she is? She's the one who just put a resolution forward that we have a day of atonement for the coronavirus. So apparently coronavirus struck us because of God and because we are like losing our values. She was the one also who gave that racist prayer at the swearing in of the first Muslim woman in the house. So yeah, that's another target on there. She's a horrible, horrible human being. And she was one of the architects between the protests that were happening yesterday in Harrisburg with all those fools with no masks or social distancing. So yeah, so that's our map, but you can see where we're headed. The seats are not just in southeastern PA, they're across the state. And that's one of the great things about Represent. It's not just, the candidates right here in the backyard of Philadelphia. It's looking at the entire map of where we need to win. And that's one of the things I think that Represent is great about. They take a wider view of where we need to go, not just the obvious choices.
Thank you for that comment. If I could just comment on this one, Jamie, is that Jamie's right. We do take we take a statewide view. I live in Philadelphia. I'm going to be represented by a Democrat forever. But as we get to talking about the issues and what goes on in Harrisburg and the degree of control the Republicans have in the legislature, we decided we needed to take a statewide view to make sure that we didn't just concentrate on the districts that I live in or that you live in or that are in Southeast PA, but we take advantage of whatever opportunities there are to flip districts so that we could have the best view. The other thing Jamie mentioned was, I sometimes refer to Tom Wolf as Governor Veto, because a lot of what he's had to do is veto a lot of legislation. We have a Republican legislature who thinks that every time they run out of something to talk about one day, let's come up with another restriction on women's health care. And Governor Wolf has been very good about vetoing those, but we're a state that invests an awful lot of power in the legislature. Some states, most of the power, like New York, most of the power is in the governor, but that isn't the way our Constitution in Pennsylvania is written, which makes this view of the state and our ability to go after changeable districts very important. And if you look up the center of the state or up the Lehigh Valley, to the right and north, these are districts that are changing a lot. The makeup of them is changing. There are New Yorkers moving into the northern part. There are an increasing number of new immigrants and new citizens moving into these districts. And so that's another reason to take advantage of changing demographics now.
And if you look at the 2019 results in these counties, we were able to flip quite a few counties from Republican control to Democrat. So, the obvious ones in SEPA, which were Chester, Delaware, and Bucks. But if you move up, we flipped Northampton, Lehigh, and Monroe. And that's what's important. It just shows that, these are winnable districts. Governor Wolf wins them. They are not completely adverse to voting Democrat. We just tend to lose them down ticket because people are not aware of what their state representatives do. They say, oh, he comes to the parade and he gives out candy. And if I call about a SEPTA issue or pothole, he fixes it. But they don't realize that this individual will get on a train to Harrisburg and vote for the most restrictive abortion bill in the country. Yeah, that's why these are important. We have the census coming, which means that the lines are going to be redrawn. So if we are not in the driver's seat, we will not be in control of the maps. So we'll have to face another decade of the state legislature. I can tell you, they have a climate denier in charge of the environmental committee. He's the chair. They passed, the most restrictive abortion bill. That's like Chris says, pretty much when they run out of things to talk about, they come after a choice. They passed a a bill that's clearly in violation of HIPAA, which restricts women's rights to get an abortion if there's a Down syndrome diagnosis, which isn't even constitutional. We've had the heartbeat bill pass. One of the most offensive is the fetal remains bill, which means women have to pay for miscarriage interned and get a death certificate. This all passed, and this is all stuff that was vetoed by the governor. Yesterday, they passed reopening the government, despite that even Trump isn't even reopening the government, and the governor had to veto that. So we are in pretty bad shape here in Pennsylvania, not to mention the myriad of other things they do that's terrible. But that's why this is it. We need to get rid of this president, but we can't stop looking at our own backyard, because these lines are going to be redrawn for a decade. And we are fighting the gerrymander every day in these districts. We don't have a lot of people of color running this cycle. And if you look at the demographics of these districts, it's because there's no people of color in them. They gerrymandered them into districts for, and those are Democratic districts, and we control those. But these are districts that were drawn specifically to retain a Republican majority. So we're fighting them on their turf. If we had fair lines, game over. I mean, they could not win these districts if they were drawn fairly. They just couldn't, and they know that. So that's why supporting these women, and I guess that's a good transition to what Chris is going to talk about, but that's why supporting these candidates is so important. People are always enamored by the top of the ticket with the president and the congressional races, and they have alternate revenue streams that state legislative candidates do not have. Without organizations like Represent and things, groups like that, the funding is just not there, especially now in these uncertain times with the financial crisis. It is going to be very, very hard for our state legislative candidates to raise money. Candidates are doing call time right now, and they're telling me, yeah, I talked to somebody I haven't talked to in 10 years. They're like, oh yes, my mom has the virus and we were both laid off from our job. How do you ask people for money in those circumstances? So they are struggling, and they need the support from groups like Represent more than ever, especially these women, because we need more women up there, obviously, or we would not be having fetal remains bill and things like that. So I'll wait to the end if anyone has any questions, but if you want to be active and things you want to do from home and anything, you're willing to contribute as far as, your personal time, we will find a job for you.
I send people to Turn PA Blue all the time. When people say, what can I do besides giving money? I say, well, besides giving money, have you already given money? When Represent started, we started with the idea that women were good philanthropic givers to their causes, but they didn't really give as much politically, both because they didn't have a way of doing it, they weren't always asked to give, and they didn't understand the value of political giving. And this is where I think we're really, really well linked up with what Jamie talks about, is that there's a lot of ways. She mentioned early in her presentation that there's a lot of ways that people can support candidates and to get out and make sure their voices are heard. And after when Turn PA Blue started after the 2016 elections, it was with the idea that people needed to be their interest and their energy needed to be harnessed, and they needed to have a place to go to. So very often after we have a presentation and somebody says, what else can I do besides give dollars to Represent, I always send them to the Turn PA Blue website, because on there you'll find out, in normal times, you'd find out which district they were sending people to caucus, to go door to door, but also what kind of campaigns you can be involved in. And that's a wonderful clearinghouse for candidates to get support for their efforts and to be able to double up on what's going on in their own districts.
Right now we're working in collaboration with the state party and both caucuses doing a really large vote by mail phone bank. We're trying to get as many people signed up for that as possible. We don't know where we're going to be in November. We have new voting machines everywhere. And we have a lot of, our voters are older, and we want to make sure their votes are counted. So right now, what the efforts we're focusing is calling voters using a predictive dialer. So you will get calls. I know people don't like phone banking because you just call and no one answers. This is a dialer that calls till people answer, and people are very receptive to these calls because it kind of fits the what we're talking about now. You know, we're making voting safe. So it's not as tone deaf as a lot of other things you could be talking about as far as political calls. So we're doing days of action every Saturday with the state party. So I can get that information to you. It's just really rewarding. People are just stressed out and they want to vote against this maniac. And we're just finding, you know, ways to recruit volunteers and get people their ballots so we don't miss a vote at all. If something, you know, we have another, let's not talk about that. We're all going to be able to vote. It's going to be great. But just in case, you know, we have mail-ins. So.
And now Jamie's picked up on another one of our themes. So one is give money to represent, because we take a statewide view and we elect people who are women who are consistent with your values. Number two is volunteer your time, volunteer your effort. This is a time for nobody sits at home. I tell everybody this year I'm not traveling. My money and my time are all going to saving democracy. And the third theme is make sure you've signed up for mail-in voting. There is a push to try and get mandatory voting by mail, and so that there be a push by each of the counties to send out the ballots to everybody. But in the meantime, you can go online and you can register to vote by mail. We don't want to be in the position that Wisconsin was in a couple weeks ago, where people asked for their mail-in ballots late, overwhelmed the people who were sending in the ballots, and then their ballots did not count.
That's something that's really important because, you know, one of the ways that we're talking about signing up for vote by mail is that, you know, we're performing a service. Like, we're going to lose a lot of poll workers because they're older and they may not be comfortable working the polls. They're going to try to figure out how to consolidate these polls. They're new machines, so there's going to be lines. You know, people are going to want to vote. And, you know, Democratic voters are not as reliable turnout voters as Republicans are. Democrats, we have, you know, different demographics of people that are harder to reach. So we want to make sure the polls are accessible for those who need to be there on election day. If you have any way you can take yourself out of the system and unburden the lines and the time it takes to vote. I mean, I don't know, whatever counties you're in, if you've got the new voting machine, it takes longer to vote than it used to. So we just want to make the lines be shorter. We want to make the process smoother. The earlier we get the ballots in, the easier they are to process. So we just want to plan for the contingencies, and spreading that word among like good, solid Democratic voters is super important, because we can take ourselves out of election day to make it easier on those who definitely will only vote on election day.
So I want to move into now talking about why do we want to make the change? Yes, we want to change out the, as Jamie eloquently put it, the maniac in the White House. But we also, and if you're not watching him every day and reminding yourself of why he needs to go, there are so many issues that are discussed at the state level that are influenced only at the state level, and that people don't know about. As Jamie said earlier, so many people think of their state rep as a person who shows up at a ribbon cutting ceremony or who asks a couple questions. But when you really look at the scope of what's decided at the state, it is so important that we change people out. I remember last time a few of the candidates we supported talked about the hardest part for them was everybody knew so-and-so who was their current state rep because she was so nice, and she was a moderate Republican. But there was nothing moderate about, you know, I'm thinking of a particular person, there was nothing moderate about her views. She voted against or for every ban on abortion, and she also voted against all gun control laws. A lot of things people don't know about Pennsylvania, and we've highlighted a few of them here. But, you know, for example, since the Parkland shooting, 26 states have passed and signed over 50 laws addressing gun violence, but not Pennsylvania. 82% of our counties have no abortion providers. School funding is the most unequal in the entire country between rich and poor school districts because of the funding formulas we use. The worst in the country. Oh, by the way, in education, our college students graduate with the most amount of debt of any state in the country. Our junior colleges or our community colleges are ranked in the bottom 5 of any state in the country. the bottom point we make on this slide is that we are the only state that doesn't tax companies when pulling oil and gas from our state. This one becomes kind of a mute issue right now, given the fact that a lot of the fracking business is going to go away given the price, or at least in the short term, given the price of oil. There are state legislatures where issues are decided, and we just want to play we've been filming some of our electeds.
Can you hear it now, Chris?
Yeah.
Great.
We are so media saturated with what's happening at the national level that it's really easy to forget that the things that are happening in our state capital have such a direct impact on our everyday lives.
What's happening in Harrisburg is incredibly important.
There are a number of issues that must be decided in Harrisburg. These have a real-life impact on people living in my district, on you and me, our kids, our schools, but the laws are written in Harrisburg.
There are things that we can do in the state capital that affect people instantaneously.
We talk about education funding,
Environmental issues,
reproductive health,
gun control,
issues such as minimum wage,
criminal justice reform,
everything that basically affects our daily lives.
We have to look at Harrisburg to make those changes.
Harrisburg matters. Harrisburg matters because when the federal government fails to act, or when the federal government acts against our local interests, is the state that steps in.
I hope people pay more attention. I think it's really important. I think we lose out when people aren't paying attention.
Harrisburg and state level politics is also a great place for people to get involved and have the chance to make really clear what's important to you. Why are you, spending your time or your money getting involved in politics? But it's a great way to, really have our values represented and to make sure that the kind of change we want to see in our government, in our city, in our state, in our party, in our Democratic Party, make sure it's really reflective of our values and what's important to us.
Jamie talked about the numbers. I hope you understand how important the legislature is, how important these issues are, how important it is that you talk about these things. You're going to leave here today and go and have your next cup of coffee. Be sure and tell people how important the state legislature is and how changeable things are. Jamie mentioned these numbers. We only need to flip 4 more Senate seats and 9 House seats. People ask us, is that doable? The Senate's going to be tough. There's 50 state senators, and only half of them are up for election this time. And some of the districts are going to be very tough to try and flip. But the whole House is up, and the 9 House seats that we need to flip is very doable. We could look at 20 of them that we think have an opportunity, depends on how we do it. What is Represent's role in this? We've just gone through our endorsement process, and we're in the middle of notifying the candidates that they're going to get funding from Represent. Who are we endorsing? We're endorsing 5 new Senate candidates, 5 women who are running. We're endorsing 18 new House candidates, 18 women who are running from throughout the Commonwealth to try and change Pennsylvania. And we're endorsed and have endorsed our 18 incumbents. We fund them to some extent, but we want to make sure that they know that we care about them and we want them to continue. Our endorsement process has taken place over the last month or so, and we are providing $200,000 this cycle to these candidates that we talk about. And that's 41 women in total across 18 counties. Again, that's our statewide focus. As I said, we're spending $200,000. Last cycle in 2018, for the 2018 election, we did $200,000 altogether. This cycle, we've already invested $34,000 in a handful of incumbents who we decided early on needed some funding, both to defend their seats and to scare off any potential primary opponents. We wanted their end of 2018 filings to show that they had money in the bank. And now, as I said, we're investing $200,000 in additional candidates. So put that together with some money that we did in special, that's over $234,000 invested in 41 Democratic women candidates in races all over the Commonwealth. It's not enough. It's not enough to make major change all over. Campaigns are much more difficult this year. All of our candidates are trying to figure out how to, with Jamie's help and with the help of their campaign advisors, trying to figure out how to have an impact in the time when knocking on doors isn't your major method of spreading your message. And that's why we ask for more funding. We want to continue to make this change. As I said earlier, we've gone from, we were 49th in the United States in terms of share of women in elected office. We were 42 in terms of women in our state legislature. We now have almost 26% of our state legislature between the Republicans and the Democrats are women. But we're not going to stop until we're at least 50%. We at Represent PA really believe in reflective democracy. And that means we need to have somebody who looks like all of us in the state legislature. Our particular piece is gender, but we look at gender from these candidates that we're supporting. They're all women, but they're a wide variety of women. They're young and they're older. They've got different amounts of experience in the world. They are married and single. They're gay and they're straight. They're all different religions. Some of them grew up in privilege. Some of them grew up but want to share what they've learned. Some of them have grown up in situations where they didn't have a lot of money. Some of them were fostered. Some of them, so they're a wide variety of women. And those are all the voices that we want to be hearing in Harrisburg. We want everybody's point of view to be heard. Did I mention we'd like you to donate? By the way, we have covered all of our expenses for the year already. So every dollar we get in, we'll turn around and make a campaign donation in an area where we think we can make a difference. I love this quote. Jamie had this in her presentation. Do you want to talk to it, Jamie?
One of my favorite things about doing this when we interact with volunteers is, we're making asks of them all the time to come out and canvass and do all these certain things, and they thank us. They thank us for giving them something to do, for giving them hope and a way to fight back and a way to engage. And this is just a great quote from President Obama. The best way not to feel hopeless is to get up and do something. Don't wait for good things to happen to you. If you go out and make some good things happen, you will fill the world with hope. You will fill yourself with hope. And that's the thing, the fact that we're actively fighting these policies and these horrible people every single day, instead of just sitting there like bystanders, it empowers people. It makes people feel better. It puts the fight in it. And it makes people want to get out there and get something done. It's very, it takes some of the helplessness out of this. And of course, I always have to point out in this slide that this was when President Obama was here for the 2018 midterms, and everybody in the staging area, I put Turn PA Blue stickers on them. Do you see? They're all wearing them. I love that.
This woman knows how to get things done.
People say it's like therapy for them, is being able to engage. And if you can't physically do that, your money is necessary, your money is needed. Everything just got a ton more expensive because we can't do what we do best, which is knock doors, which is free. So things got a little more expensive for our candidates as it is. And we're going to hit the doors as soon as it's safe. And I said, we have protocols in place to make this effective and safe for everyone, but we're not sure how that's going to be, when that's going to be. And then everything else we do costs money. So that's the problem. So that's why, your giving is more important than ever for these candidates.
And you always have to remember, this is much more inspirational than what I say. I always just tell people that yelling at your TV set does not do anything except raise your blood pressure or send you to the refrigerator to find something to eat. Working and working on these kind of things is what gives us all hope. Thank you. We can turn the slides off now. I wanted to know, I know that we have some of our electeds in the audience, and I'd just like to know who we have, and so that we can introduce them. So who do you have for me, Helen?
One sec, I'm trying to unmute Shanna Danielson, if you want to go ahead and say hi.
Shanna's a candidate.
We're going to go with you first. Go ahead, Shanna.
Oh, okay. So I'm not currently unelected, but I will be soon because yesterday my current state senator, Mike Regan, was on the Capitol steps encouraging the protest that was happening, that people brought their children to, that people were definitely not social distancing at. And people here are frustrated. We had maybe our best fundraising day ever yesterday. Just people with that axe to grind. I can't believe my senator is such a terrible human money. But I'm a public school music teacher. I teach middle school band, which is really interesting, trying to figure out how to do that right now through a computer. I start lessons actually at 10 o'clock, and I'm teaching 15-minute lessons all day, trying to squeeze in as many kids as I can. I have a 5-year-old son who's in kindergarten, so we're also trying to figure out how to teach him and then run a campaign when you can't leave your house. So this has been very challenging, to say the least. I'm in the 31st district, which is northern York County and the West Shore suburbs in Cumberland. This district went for Governor Wolf in 2018. It is doable, and we're going to do it.
And
so I'm glad to take part.
Shanna, we look forward to supporting you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I'll just quickly run through the rest. If you would just say hi and say what district and why you're going to, and in 2 sentences, why you're going to make a difference. I guess we have Sharon Guidi next.
Sharon, you're up.
I'm Sharon Guidi. I am running in the 40th district against Natalie Mihalik, who is not only supporting all of the horrible legislation that you just talked about, she is also leading the charge to open the state early. So we need to say goodbye to Natalie and put someone with a brain.
Thank you.
Kathy Spar, how about we'll go to you?
Oh,
there you go. You're on.
Okay. Hi, my name's Kathy Spar. I'm running for House District 160, which is in Southwest Delaware County and Southern Chester County. It's what I fondly call the curve of the Delaware-Pennsylvania border. And the great news about my seat is that the 24-year Republican incumbent is retiring at the end of his term. So we have an open seat to fight for, and I think we have a real opportunity to win. This seat has gone for Wolf, it's gone for Casey. We just need to make sure those down ballot candidates like myself are known to the voters.
Thank you. And we know that Delaware County leadership flipped in the 2019, as Jamie was talking about. So now it's time to clean house in their legislative districts. Who do you have next?
Got Brittany Foreman for you next.
Good morning. Good morning. This is Brittany Foreman. I'm running in the 168th district in Delaware County. Everything that you were just saying about Delaware County kind of flipping blue in 2019 and is so eager to continue that momentum here in this particular district. The gentleman who's in office only won by 400 votes. So this is a top targeted seat to flip, and we are actually absolutely going to do it and very excited to be a part of the process.
Thank you.
Thank
Who do
you.
you have next?
I have Anne-Marie Mitchell for you next.
Good morning, everyone. I'm running in the 178th district. It's in the heart of Bucks County. I'm actually really encouraged to see a whole number of my Emerge sisters here today. So I'm going to say hello to all of them, as well as all of you. I'm running because I'm, just like you, unhappy. I'm not going to yell at the TV screen. My answer to being unhappy with what I see and what's going on in my district was to run. What they always say is you want to see change, you need to be the change. So very excited to be able to do this for my district, and we're actually enjoying the virtual canvassing. So if anybody's reluctant to phone bank, I'm gonna highly recommend it. It's been really, really rewarding, and people are really happy for that kind of human contact.
Thank you. She mentioned Emerge. We do partner well with Emerge and other organizations. Emerge is a training program that provides both short-term and cohort-based training for women running as Democrats. And we love to find out who they are, know that they're well-trained, and get some more insight into them as we go through our endorsement process. We also work with Emily's List to find out who they're endorsing and who they support in this state. So we're a coordinated effort across the Commonwealth to make sure we're finding the best candidates. one other point that Jamie and I both wanted to make sure that everybody knew about was that you're taking care to look at and making sure you're getting your census in. So our other commercial, oh, did we have a commercial already about giving us money? We had our commercial about giving your time through Turn PA Blue. We had our commercial about signing up for mail-in ballots. And now we want to have our commercial about do your census. Because of the census and where people live in the state, that's how we control both what that's how we're going to decide what the new districts look like. I think it's over $30 billion in federal funding comes to the state, and it's allocated by the federal government based on overall population and also population in different areas of the state. And these are the numbers that are going to get used to redistrict. And, you know, Jamie showed a map earlier of all these funny looking districts with the different arms and stuff. We know that the worst of the congressional districts were taken away by the courts. But if our legislature stays with the same people it has now, they will try and redo this, the congressional districts, and they're going to try and make sure that their jobs are continued to be safe in the new election. Somebody posted recently, and I can't remember his name because I prefer to blank them out. One of our fine state reps who was shown at the Capitol wearing his N95 mask upside down and talking about that this was not a big deal. And somebody had said, let's vote him out. Well, we can't, because it's a largely Republican district and nobody signed up to run, and it was going to be a lost cause. And the best thing we can man in the minority after this election and redistrict him so that he's got to have a competitive race in 2022.